trade with China. He says he had hoped Beijing would pressure North Korea to abandon its nuclear weapons program. Now he says his patience is simply running out. Mr. Trump saying, quote, oil is going into North Korea. That wasn't my deal. If they don't help us with North Korea, then I can do what I've always said I want to do. We have a nuclear menace out there, which is no good for China. In a minute, we'll have analysis from Ambassador John Bolton. But first, Ellison Barber here now live with more on this rapidly unfolding crisis. Good to see you, Ellison.
Good evening, Ed. President Trump says he's very disappointed. China says they did not do it. It's a different tone from President Trump. In November, he repeatedly praised Chinese President Xi Jinping while visiting the country. At one point, Mr. Trump said he did not blame China for taking advantage of America's trade policy. And now tonight, it seems like he is indeed changing his tune. North Korea has launched about 90 missiles since 2012. This year, they've tested 3 intercontinental ballistic missiles. Since 2006, the United Nations Security Council has adopted 10 resolutions imposing or strengthening sanctions against North Korea, all said to be geared at preventing North Korea from further developing their nuclear weapons program. The most recent came Friday. In part, it prohibits directly or indirectly supplying, selling, or transferring crude oil to North Korea. Now, a South Korean newspaper is reporting that U.S. satellites have captured Chinese ships selling oil to North Korean ships around 30 times since October, potentially violating or at least bypassing UN sanctions. China's response, according to Reuters, the situation you have mentioned absolutely does not exist. Gordon Chang has extensively studied and written about the North Korean regime. He says the accusations are likely true.
These ship-to-ship transfers from Chinese vessels to North Korean ones, they occurred in October and in following months. Those are violations of UN sanctions that were already in place. So it doesn't really matter whether they were before or after last Friday. They were violative of UN rules. And also, we know that a North Korean ship which was sanctioned, not permitted to go into a Chinese port, actually turned on its transponder in a Chinese port near Shanghai this month.
Democratic Senator Richard Blumenthal criticized President Trump's initial response, tweeting, quote, resolve against Chinese must be relentless. He goes on to say aiding and abetting must be met with real pressure and penalties, not just tweets.
We know that Chinese banks, even large ones, have been laundering money for the North Koreans. We need to have either big fines on those banks or preferably having them declared to be primary money laundering concerns. And in a sense, yeah, sanctions have not stopped the North Koreans up to now. But that's because we have not been willing to apply the sanctions against those countries that have kept the North Koreans in business, specifically China, Russia, and some others.
Earlier this week, the U.S. announced sanctions targeting 2 senior North Korean officials behind the ballistic missile program. Ed?
Ellison, we appreciate that. Let's go straight to Ambassador John Bolton. Ambassador, when I saw this tweet, these tweets fly by, and sometimes, well, you know, he's tweeted about this before. But when I saw the president say there will never be a friendly solution to the North Korea problem if this continues, I stopped. Is that a big deal?
Yes, absolutely. Look, this overhead, the satellite photography of these Chinese ships hooking up with North Korean ships transferring oil is a fire bell in the night. Forget the UN Security Council resolutions. This is China directly propping up the North Korean regime. Not a sparrow falls in China regarding North Korea that the authorities don't know about. This didn't happen by accident.
So we've heard for months that China's the key. They can help stop North Korea. If they're colluding, if they're working with them, we've got a crisis.
They absolutely are the key. They supply over 90% of North Korea's oil. They functionally keep that regime in power. And for 25 years, they have played the United States, acting as though they're concerned, saying they don't want North Korea to have nuclear weapons, but not doing what they could do. Even now, after President Trump has put it, as he said in the New York Times interview, put it very directly to China, gave them not a free pass, but went easy on them on trade, a very important issue to him, in the expectation they would do what they could do on North Korea. They haven't done it. They've insulted him, basically.
They've insulted the president, you say. How remarkable of an admission was that from the president of the United States tonight that not I've been played, but they didn't hold up their end of the bargain.
He took a chance. Look, he's an optimistic man. I understand that. I didn't think the deal would work, but he was entitled to try it. They screwed him. I mean, how many ways do you have to put it to get it to understand? He tried to work with them, and they haven't done it. So all this chatter about, well, we can have more sanctions, we can do this, we can do the other thing, we are running out of time. Now, I think it's perfectly clear to all the analysts that both in terms of the nuclear weapons side, where they've detonated a thermonuclear device, and on the ballistic missile side, they're very close to the point where they can hit targets in the United States. So you can talk about massive sanctions all you want. By the time they might have some effect, North Korea's crossed the finish line.
So the fact that they have these missiles that may now be able to reach many U.S. cities, and you have China, which is supposed to be the linchpin, working with the North Koreans and propping them up, as you say, and screwing the president, as you said quite bluntly. What the heck is next?
Well, I think we're down to some very unattractive options unless China really does an about-face here and help us get rid of this regime. The problem of North Korean nuclear weapons is the regime. My proposal would be eliminate the regime by reunifying the peninsula under South Korean control.
Are you saying regime change?
Yes, exactly. Well, regime elimination with the Chinese. This is something we need to do with them. And the one encouraging thing I'd say here is that Secretary Tillerson let slip a few days ago, was confirmed by other military sources, that we have had military-to-military talks with China on contingencies in North Korea. This is very significant because until now the Chinese have not been willing to do it. I think because Trump has been very clear that military force is an option, that we've gotten their attention at least to some extent.
So what should our viewers know tonight? Are we more likely to go to war in 2018 tonight with what we know now?
Well, I think we're close to the binary choice of either admitting North Korea is going to have nuclear weapons for as far as the eye can see, or looking at preemptive military force. The president was very clear in his objective in his September speech to the UN. He said denuclearization is the only way forward. North Korea isn't going to do it voluntarily. China doesn't appear yet to be willing to do it on its own. That leaves one way.
So let me help our viewers and me understand. We teased before the possibility people talk about a bloody nose strike. I assume that means you strike North Korea militarily, not taking out the regime necessarily, but trying to take out the nuclear program, or something much more serious like regime change, taking out Kim Jong-un.
There are a huge range of possibilities. The problem is that almost any of them risks North Korean retaliation against the innocent civilians of South Korea. Now, that tells you a lot about the North Korean regime, that their idea of defense is killing innocent civilians.
Right. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of people.
Well, I think that's exaggerated. And I think
tens of thousands?
Part of the hysteria here is to say you can't use military force at all. Let me be clear again. The job of the President of the United States is to protect Americans. But if we decided to use military force, I do think we ought to take whatever steps we can to suppress the North Korean artillery north of the DMZ and minimize the chances for a wider conflict. But what China needs to know, and what they may be appreciating, is that any military force against North Korea, even just its nuclear facilities, could collapse the regime.
Wow.
That's what we need to talk to China about. There's an easy way to do this and a hard way to do this. And the fact that China is not cooperating on the oil shipments...
Not making it easy.
Exactly.
Ambassador Bolton, we appreciate your perspective tonight.
Thank you, Ed.
Now, we mentioned at the top we'd get to that other big development on the Russia probe. The chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Republican Devin Nunes, is now demanding a witness list and documents related to the Russia investigation by a January 3rd deadline. He's slamming the Justice Department and the FBI in a strongly worded letter obtained exclusively by Fox News' John Roberts. He says the Bureau and the department have not effectively responded to congressional demands for more information about one of the most critical components of the alleged Russia collusion probe, the so-called Steele dossier. It's named after its author, former British intelligence agent named Christopher Steele, who compiled the report for a research firm with financial backing from the DNC. It contains many unverified salacious allegations about President Trump. Chairman Nunes sounds clearly frustrated in the letter, saying the agencies continue to slow walk his request, and concludes that at this point, quote, the DOJ and FBI need to be investigating themselves. A call echoed a short while ago by Trey Gowdy, a fellow member of the Intelligence Committee.
They need to produce the witnesses and the information. This has taken longer than it should and longer than it needs to.
Now, for more on this, let's bring in Daniel Halper. He's a contributing editor for the Washington Free Beacon, and Niall Stenage, the White House columnist for The Hill. I want to start with you, Daniel. This is a strongly worded letter, and we see those flying around Washington, and then nobody ever does anything. But it's Devin Nunes has been meaning business. He's the one who's shaking loose these details about Fusion GPS and the DNC and the Clinton campaign. And now when he sends this letter, what do you think happens next?
Well, look, and the letter's not totally out of left field. There's been growing support for more pressure on the FBI and the Justice Department to get more transparency in this process. So I think that voice that's growing is going to continue to grow even louder, and I think there's going to be more and more pressure. And at some point, you got to wonder, you know, the Justice Department, well, the FBI is under the Justice Department, which is in the executive branch, which is under Donald Trump's purview. Mm-hmm. At what point will President Trump actually take action and start firing people or start demanding answers to these questions? And you got to think that it may come sooner rather than later.
Really? Because the president in this interview with the New York Times said something interesting now. Among other things, he said, quote, "I have absolute right," the president said, "to do what I want to do with the Justice Department. But for purposes of hopefully thinking I'm going to be treated fairly, I've stayed uninvolved with this particular matter." He seems to be saying, I want to make sure I get a fair shake with Robert Mueller, so I don't want to do anything rash with the Justice Department in terms of going after FBI agents like Peter Strzok. And so he's being transparent about that. But on the other hand, there are a lot of people wondering tonight, why in the world does Peter Strzok, who sent all these anti-Trump texts, still have a job?
Well, there are a couple of things there, Ed. I thought that the president's comments in that New York Times interview were very interesting because he emphasized that he believes Mueller is going to be fair. Now, I assume that's a sincere belief, but it's also of a piece of the legal strategy or the strategy of his legal team, which has been to cooperate with Mueller to the greatest extent possible, even while we have Republican members of Congress like Mr. Nunes adopting a much more critical line.
You're right. I mean, Ty Cobb, one of the White House lawyers, has consistently said he thinks that the sort of presidential phase of the Mueller probe is wrapping up soon, that there will not be obstruction of justice. He's been mocked by some people in the media, and yet, as you say, the president seems to be buying into that, that he's going to get a fair shake, and he's not going to do anything rash. But, Daniel, I want to go back to this notion of the president talking about the Justice Department. You said a moment ago there could be something imminent here. Do you think in the days ahead we'll see firings? Bruce Orr at the Justice Department, others who have had very questionable roles in the dossier.
I don't know about in the days ahead. I just think that the president he is able to put pressure and to make things happen. This is under his purview. This is separate from the Mueller investigation, though you do have to believe that if the Mueller investigation weren't going on, we wouldn't quite be in these circumstances. So they're obviously all connected, but it is separate, and you wonder, the president clearly doesn't think that the Justice Department's acting adequately. He doesn't think the FBI is acting appropriately. At what point does he say we need to have the Justice Department and FBI be trusted by the American people? Yeah. We need them to act appropriately, and I'm going to do something about it.
I want to ask you, that we're talking about whether the president gets a fair shake in the judicial process and in the Justice Department and the FBI. There's also the question of whether he's getting a fair shake with the media. Something caught my eye, Axios today. They had Gallup data that looked at coverage of past administrations. And in terms of, say, Clinton 93, his first year in office, negative coverage 28%, positive 27, neither 44. Bush 2001, 28% negative, 22 positive. Obama, this is interesting, so much more positive. 42% of his first few months in office, positive, 20% negative. But Donald Trump, 62% negative, 5% of the coverage positive. This is, pardon me, I said Gallup. This is the Pew Research Center. This is not a conservative outfit, Niall. What in the world does this tell you? And there are some who say they're surprised it's only 62% negative, that the coverage of Donald Trump is just plain nasty.
Well, look, Ed, no one ever makes friends by going on TV and defending the media, but let me take a little bit of a shot at it here. I'm not a huge fan of these kind of polls for a very specific reason, and it's that I don't think they take into account the degree to which events drive coverage. if you're the head coach of the team that wins the Super Bowl, you get better coverage than the guy who loses. That's not media prejudice. This poll was based on the first 60 days of Donald Trump's presidency. There were a lot of very controversial things that happened there, including Michael Flynn's resignation, including widespread protests.
Sure.
Those things are going to get negative coverage. There's a broader issue as well.
Sure. Big picture, Daniel, though, I got 30 seconds.
Well, look, the New England Patriots may disagree. I mean, there are plenty of good teams that get bad coverage. Look, President Trump, it's very clear the media hates Donald Trump. There's just no way to, perhaps it's justified, perhaps it's not. But they objectively hate Donald Trump, and you can see it in their coverage every single day.
Gentlemen, appreciate you coming in. Happy New Year almost.
Thank you.
China, meanwhile, fighting back economically against that $1.5 trillion tax cut signed into law last Friday by the president. And another sign of just how much of an impact that tax cut may have on the U.S. economy, Beijing now says it will temporarily exempt foreign companies from paying any taxes, as long as they invest those earnings in sectors encouraged, of course, by the communist government. Back here at home, more than a dozen companies say they're giving employees their bonuses or other perks in connection with passage of the tax cut, which cuts the corporate tax rate, you'll remember, from 35% to 21%. Some of the corporate announcements go beyond a one-time bonus. Today, insurance company Aflac said it will increase investment in the U.S. by $250 million and make a $500 one-time contribution to every single employee's 401k. A Disney heiress is not happy about the new tax law, even though she appears to be poised to benefit from it big time. Abigail Disney, granddaughter of Roy Disney, who is the co-founder, of course, of the Walt Disney Company, slams the new tax law in a viral video from Now This News, saying the tax cuts are just for the wealthy and corporations and they hurt ordinary Americans. Disney also blasted the tax plan for, quote, killing health insurance for over 13 million people. She claims she'll pocket something like $30 million from the tax cut. Well, I checked tonight, and the Bureau of the Fiscal Service says that acting on behalf of the Treasury Secretary, that office can accept gifts donated to the U.S. government to reduce debt held by the public. So far, in fiscal year 2018, I checked, only $192,610.56 has been donated. So, Mrs. Disney, you can give it back. Just saying. Meanwhile, actress Jenna Fisher, most known for her role as Pam on The Office, she's issuing an apology tonight after using false Democratic talking points to slam the GOP tax cuts. She tweeted she was upset the new bill will be stopping teachers from deducting the cost of classroom supplies. One problem, lawmakers left that deduction alone. Teachers can deduct up to $250 for classroom supplies. To her credit, Fisher has since deleted the tweet and issued this apology, saying she's not ashamed to admit she was wrong, and she deleted her tweet because she believes, quote, accuracy is important. Indeed. Coming up, as Democrats look to 2018, calls from within the party for new leadership getting louder. Why is Howard Dean, the former DNC chair, sounding like he wants Chuck and Nancy to go? Plus, a new report on immigration could help the president shape the debate and his policy to crack down on illegals. And later, an MS-13 gang member's murder could have been a result of a sanctuary policy. More on that and the president's crackdown on the gang after this. And this is a Fox News alert. Tragedy in New York City tonight. 12 reported dead at this hour. Among them, reportedly, a baby. About 15 people seriously injured. You can see these horrible pictures of fire ripping through a Bronx apartment building on this frigid night in the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic. Fire Commissioner Daniel Nigro called the blaze, quote, historic in its magnitude because of the number of lives lost. About 170 firefighters fought the fire and rescued fleeing tenants, doing a remarkable job working in temperatures in the teens.
They started to get everybody out, but people were on the fire escape already trying to get down on their own. That's how fast it was moving. People were screaming, and that's how we knew it was trouble, because people were screaming, fire, hell, fire, hell.
Just so tragic. We'll stay on top of it if we get any more developments on that tonight. Meanwhile, in the political world, in the 2014 midterm elections, the Democratic Party, of course, lost control of the Senate. 2016, they lost the White House. Now, as the party looks to 2018, there are louder calls from within for an influx of new faces, new leadership. Does Howard Dean really want Chuck and Nancy gone? Well, Lauren Blanchard joined us live again with some details on this strife within the Democratic Party. Good to see you, Lauren.
Hey, Ed. Well, although Democrats have had some wins in November and just this month in the Alabama special election, many in the party wonder how they can keep their momentum going into 2018 and 2020. Howard Dean, the former Democratic presidential candidate and DNC chair, says the Democrats need to shape up and freshen up their party's leaders.
I'm very much for somebody who's younger. I think my generation's got to get the hell out of politics, start coaching, and start moving up this next generation.
Dean says older party leaders like Senator Bernie Sanders, former Vice President Joe Biden, Senator Elizabeth Warren, and House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi need to hand the reins of the progressively progressive party to someone who isn't more than half a century old. Although Sanders rallied younger voters by the millions during the last election, Dean says it's those younger faces that need to take over. Fifth-ranking House Democrat Linda Sanchez back in October said there needed to be a change in House leadership, despite assurances from Leader Pelosi she's not going anywhere.
I do think we have this real breadth and depth of talent within our caucus, and I do think it's time to pass the torch to a new generation of leaders, and I want to be a part of that transition.
I respect any opinion that my members have, but my decision about how long I stay is not up to them.
When it comes to 2020, Howard Dean says he would only endorse someone in the next generation, naming a few Democrats he wants to see. And Ed, it's not the first time the aging problem has been brought up. Last month, even Saturday Night Live spoofed how the Democratic Party, which often says it stands for the youth, is led by people in their late 60s and 70s. Ed? All
right, Lauren Blanchard, appreciate it. Let's explore the calls for new leadership within the Democratic Party a little further. I'm joined by Wendy Osefo, a liberal political commentator and professor at Johns Hopkins University, and Derek Hunter, a columnist at Town Hall, contributing editor at the Daily Caller. Good to see you both.
Thanks for having me.
As a Democrat, I have to start with you.
Absolutely.
Chuck and Nancy gone?
It's not necessarily Chuck and Nancy gone. It's more so making sure that in 2018 to 2020, we are looking at not a moment, but a movement. And if we look at what happened with the Republicans, 17 people ran, and Donald Trump won. He's elderly, but he's still got that momentum behind him.
Yeah.
He is. So, you know, what we have to do here is, yes, bring in the fresh faces, but we can't wilter people out simply because of their age. And so if Biden wants to run, and if he'll captivate the Democratic Party, then by all means,
so
let him do it.
So you want Nancy Pelosi to stick around for another few years?
You know, I think Nancy, her leadership is something that has become questionable within the Democratic Party, and I don't think that's about her age. And that's what we have to make very clear. We have to delineate between age and whether you're an effective leader, and that's the issue with Nancy and Chuck.
Derek, we see, especially in these swing districts around the country, that it will decide who's going to control the House. If Republicans run an ad showing Nancy Pelosi with the Democratic candidate, it's deadly.
Nancy Pelosi is not very popular. I want Nancy Pelosi to stick around, I can tell you that. It's funny listening
There's
to
no hesitation.
No, not at all. I would never donate to a political campaign except maybe her. It's funny hearing Democrats talk about we need new blood, we need new blood. They can go to Keith Richards' doctor and get all their blood changed. They're still selling unpopular ideas. That's what they don't seem to get. It's not the messenger, it's the message.
That's what I said. We need a movement.
But you can't change a few words and focus group a few things and make an unpopular idea popular.
Wendy, on that point, the talking points from the Democrats on the tax cut were basically this is all for the rich.
Yes.
And now they've flipped it and said, well, actually, it is going to help the middle class. And they also said that the corporate tax cut was simply not going to trickle down to employees. And now company after company is saying, we're going to invest more money, we're giving out bonuses. And Bernie Sanders said a couple days ago, the problem is they haven't made the middle class tax cuts permanent. So how can Democrats with a straight face say, we want to make something permanent that we voted no on?
Well, it's not necessarily about making it permanent that we voted no on. It's making sure that we are able to see that benefit. And that is the biggest cautionary tale here, is that we're saying that it's not just the top 1%, it's also the middle class. Well, will the middle class see that in the next few months? Will they see that in a few years?
Well, the IRS says that withholding will start in February. So you'll feel it really soon.
And what's really interesting, you mentioned the corporations who are saying that they're giving bonuses are also the same corporations who have laid people off as well. So that's a delicate dance.
The problem is Bernie Sanders is sitting here wishing to be sitting over there. He's not introduced any legislation to have him sit over there. He could get up and sit over there. He's in the United States Senate. If he wants to change the law, he didn't offer an amendment to do what he was doing. He knew that no Democrat was going to vote for the Republican bill, that it was only going to get through on reconciliation. To be permanent, it needed 60 votes.
Yeah.
He didn't care. It's like me saying, I wish I was over there. Well,
Derek,
go over there,
I've got
Bernie.
30 seconds for each of you. Immigration, another big issue. Governor Cuomo in New York has now pardoned 18 illegal immigrants. This follows Jerry Brown in California pardoning 2 illegals, essentially, with criminal records just a few days ago around Christmas. What in the world's happening?
It's almost to the point that it's more advantageous to be in this country illegally. You will get special treatment from the government if you're in a blue state. There's these people that Governor Cuomo pardoned and Governor Brown pardoned have real criminal records, some of them human trafficking, some petty larceny, the whole litany of crimes. They're not pardoning Americans. They're not being pardoned based on merit. They're being pardoned because they're illegal.
What in the world is happening? These are illegal immigrants.
Yes, but we cannot paint illegal immigrants with a broad brush and say that all of
them.
These
specific ones.
Right, but these specific ones. But at the end of the day, we have to understand that sometimes when we look at these sanctuary cities, they're making sure that education is something that continues to flourish in our communities. Anything that makes it so we say immigrants are not welcome here is simply un-American. That's not what this country stands for.
We don't like the ones climbing in the back window.
They're not climbing in the back window.
Wendy, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
New developments tonight in the Las Vegas shooting massacre. Vegas native and Fox News contributor Bob Massey. He'll be here live to explain why we've heard so little over such a long time, why there are so many unanswered questions, and what's next in the probe. Then a bombshell report on illegal immigration. We'll break down the numbers, see what they mean for the immigration debate on Capitol Hill that begins early in the new year.
Everybody wants to come to the United States, and quite frankly, the United States can be choosy about who it admits.
A Maryland county's refusal to cooperate with Immigration and Customs Enforcement could have led to an alleged MS-13 gang member's death. 2 days after Jose Herrera was released from jail, the 18-year-old was gunned down and killed. ICE said the alleged gang member was released despite a detainer they say was lodged back in October. This comes as the president touts his success of cracking down on the violent MS-13 street gang, tweeting a Daily Signal report showing an 83% surge in MS-13 arrests during his presidency. In fact, new numbers could help bolster his argument to actually get something done on immigration. National correspondent William LaJeunesse reports from Los Angeles.
For decades now, U.S. immigration rules have been based on an outdated system.
A system the president wants to overhaul next year. A new report prepared by the conservative-leaning Center for Immigration Studies based on census data promises to help shape that debate.
Everybody wants to come to the United States, and quite frankly, the United States can be choosy about who it admits.
The report shows in 2016 an estimated 1.8 million legal and illegal immigrants settled in the U.S., the most ever in a single year, and 53% higher than just 5 years ago.
So the real debate now is, what should legal immigration look like? And I'll make you a prediction: in about 5 or 6 weeks, we're going to have to deal with that as you start to face the DACA expiration.
Reasons cited by the report for the jump in President Obama's last year: more guest workers and foreign students, virtually no interior or worksite enforcement, a surge in Central American women and children, and for the first time, spouses of visa holders were allowed to work, encouraging those still overseas to join new immigrants already here.
Family immigration has a huge multiplier effect. 70% of all immigrants, according to the White House, in the last decade have entered through family-based visas, and we're seeing the effects of it today.
This graph shows where immigrants are coming from. Comparing 2005 to 2015, Mexican immigration is cut in half, from 400 to under 200,000. Central Americans up by 100,000. Asian immigration almost doubled, and twice as many immigrants from Africa and the Middle East. From Europe, that immigration was flat.
What you really need to do is understand what is the undocumented population and how we fix that problem, and then reach over to those who are coming in legally and say, how do you maximize the benefit to your new home country, the United States?
The drop in Mexican immigration was dramatic. However, it also means the U.S. is deporting fewer Mexicans. Wednesday, the Mexican Interior Ministry said President Trump removed 26% fewer Mexicans than Obama in 2016. So the report doesn't take a political position, but with the economy growing and the birth rate slowing, Congress may be more concerned about who immigrates to the U.S. than how many. Ed?
Thank you, William. Coming up, security tighter than ever for New Year's Eve celebrations all across America. And in Las Vegas, security upped in the wake of October, that mass shooting, of course. Plus, a look at the investigation into that shooting and why so many questions remain unanswered about that awful tragedy. Fox News legal analyst and host of The Property Man on Fox Business Network, Bob Massey, a dear friend, joins us now to dig deeper into the security on the Vegas Strip, as over 300,000 are expected to ring in the new year there, and maybe give us an up-close look at how that city is still dealing with that awful shooting earlier this year. Bob, good to see you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
I wonder, let's start with security. It's always important all around the country. New York City, Times Square, I'm going to be there Sunday night as part of our coverage. We'll talk about that in a couple of moments. Vegas, there's always a lot of people there. They want to party. They want to ring in the new year. Are you feeling it? When I was in New York City last weekend, there's a much bigger police presence. They are ready for anything and everything. Are you seeing that in Vegas as well?
Absolutely. They are very prepared. They obviously are spending hours to make sure all the critical areas are going to be safe for the people that visit here. As you said, we'll have 300,000 to 400,000 people coming here. I mean, if you drove right now from Los Angeles, even on Thursday here over to Vegas, it's a 12-hour drive because there's so many people coming into Vegas. So yes, the presence is there. You see police cars, you see motorcycle cops, you see bicycles, you see the presence of protection.
And Bob, I've known you a long time, and there are a few people I know who has as much respect for our men and women in blue as you do.
Yes.
And I know the color of the uniform may be different there in Las Vegas. Now it's blue. I think it's brown or green. You love them, you respect them, but they've gone through a tough time in the last few moments. Let's talk about that first of all.
Yeah. Well, yes. I mean, obviously, this, as you know, is the worst tragedy we've had in America like this, and it changed the face of the city in many ways. I think at the beginning, Metro handled it very well as the FBI. There is a concern, Ed, that it's gone very quiet. And when I say that, I've been here 44 years. The residents of Las Vegas, they would like some answers. They don't expect those answers to be fabricated. And I respect the fact that they are doing the best they can. But we would like to hear something, even if it's not of substance, something a little more to give us a sense of they're getting to some resolution and understanding. However, what happens is it allows these theories, Ed, to continue to sort of roll out here. And as a result, many of us just want a little more communication. But again, love them, respect them, what they're doing, not trying to do their job for them. But at the same time, it would make us feel a little better.
Bob, you're pointing your finger at something very important. There's been these conspiracy theories, what really happened, and we hear this from our viewers all the time. They want answers. Now, we understand we're in a society, this tech age, everybody wants to tweet it, everybody wants to find out in 30 seconds. Again, we respect the men and women in uniform who are trying to get those answers. We don't expect answers in a few minutes, but time is passing, and in that void, it feels like the vacuum is being filled with a lot of questions and a lot of conspiracy theories.
The victims have lawyered up, as you know. Major law firms from different parts of the country have filed lawsuits against the MGM. They are very much in charge of what's going on. They've inspected the crime scene. They brought experts literally from all over the world to prove whatever case they're going to prove against the MGM. Saying that, again, we have men and women that work at these hotels, that work at Mandalay Bay, that now some of them, Mandalay Bay has very much, in the MGM, I should say, are trying their best to save those people's jobs and maybe move them to other hotels. The MGM has been wonderful in trying to preserve that. Saying all that, we would like some answers so we get rid of these conspiracy theories.
Bob, we hear you. All around the country, we're hearing that, and we expect in 2018 a lot more transparency. In the meantime, we hope for a happy, healthy, and safe New Year for you and your family.
I'll be watching you Sunday night, buddy. Happy New Year, buddy.
Thanks, Bob. Happy New Year. Coming up, President Trump's Christmas vacation has included a lot of golf at his club near Mar-a-Lago. Some critics at some other networks are trying to turn it into some kind of a scandal. Professional golfer Dana Quigley, who just got off the links with the president, joins us live to tell us what really happened out there. Plus, the president says it could be the coldest New Year's on record for the East Coast. How cities across the country are handling the deep freeze.
Last time I can remember something being really cold was 2014, where we had that polar vortex. And this is something that we practice in our workshops, and so this is one of the things that we do and that we prepare for.
The president spent some time golfing during his Christmas vacation at Mar-a-Lago, and then a media controversy broke out with claims that a white truck deliberately blocked cameras from getting some photos of the president golfing. A CNN producer tweeting, quote, yesterday and 2 other times during POTUS's winter vacation, CNN cameras captured Trump golfing from a public sidewalk. Today, not possible. The Secret Service told the network it didn't block their view. Quote, the USS is in the business of protection and investigations, not in commissioning vehicles to block the media's view of the president's golf swing. And a spokeswoman for the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office also says tonight they did not order a box truck to block any views of the president. Case closed. Professional golfer Dana Quigley had nothing to do with that truck either, but he did get a chance to hit the links with the president this week. He joins us now live. Dana, it's great to see you tonight, and I wonder, there's all this speculation. Critics of the president say he cheats on the golf course. He's not really a good golfer. He lies about his score. What say you?
I tell you one thing, he is a good player. He hits it a long way. The only trouble is he surrounds himself with so many great players, it's hard to tell how good he is. I mean, he plays with Tiger and Dustin Johnson and Jack Nicklaus and Brad Fax.